Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. My name is Ari, and today we're going to have some more stories about our toxic life. But before we start, it would be so much appreciated if you would subscribe to my channel, like the video, if you enjoy it, and maybe leave a comment down below. These simple clicks would mean a lot to the future of this channel and really reward the effort that I put in every day. And now without further ado, let's go. Today's first story. In this story, OP faces heartbreak when his wife has an affair with a subordinate. Despite her initial charm, her behavior shifts dramatically after a promotion. Discovering evidence of her infidelity, he confronts her and ultimately files for divorce. As she faces the consequences of her actions, he focuses on healing and rebuilding his life. Now let's get into the story. My wife and I met on a blind date that was set up by friends. I was a little hesitant to go through with this blind date because I never had much luck with them, but I had been in a bit of a dry spell. It was either go on this date or continue to remain lonely. I got on the date, and it ended up being amazing. My wife, or girlfriend at the time, was very friendly and charming. We had a decent amount in common where making conversation wasn't a struggle. The two of us dated for nearly 2 years. From there, we moved in together and got married in a small wedding ceremony surrounded by family and friends. We had lived together before marriage, which I always insisted on doing. In my mind, it gave people a chance to get to know each other better and see if they were a match before taking that giant step into marriage. Marrying my wife seemed like the best decision at the time. The two of us moved into a better apartment, continued to succeed in our jobs, and even got a pet dog. She was the one who wanted the dog, yet I ended up being the one who took care of it most of the time. Don't get me wrong, I loved the dog and enjoyed taking care of her. I'd always loved animals, but my wife was the one who wanted this specific breed that could be a bit difficult to handle. She promised me up and down that she would care for the dog a little more than half the time. However, I was doing over 90% of the work when it came to our pet. This should have been my first red flag that she was so willing to brush off a responsibility. I just did my best to handle it, because I was still madly in love with my wife. When she got a promotion at work, things started to change, but not for the better. I understood she had a lot of responsibilities now because she was supervising 3 people. It just seemed like there was something more to it. Anytime I asked her what was going on, she just said she was super stressed at work and that she was sorry for treating me this way. It was just a whole lot of stress. I wanted to believe it, so I forced myself to believe it. Ignorance is bliss, as they say, and I remained in ignorance for nearly a year after my wife's change in behavior. One day I decided to surprise her at work. I had gotten off early, so I thought it would be a nice romantic little thing for us to do. I got to the office and was told that my wife had stepped out to go to lunch. It was my fault for not checking with her, so I went back to my car. When I was about to pull out of the parking spot, I saw my wife entering the office building with a younger man who I think was one of her subordinates. The reason I did a double take is how she was acting with him. She was very touchy, giggly, and not acting like a supervisor would with someone they were supervising. I watched them go inside the building, but as much as I tried to brush it off, I couldn't, because I kept picturing how happy she looked. My wife never looked at me like that anymore. It pained me to say this, but it was the truth. I wanted to ask her what was going on, except I doubted she would tell me the truth. So I decided to check her phone when she was in the shower. The phone is always the place where you'll find what you need. Her texts were full of evidence of an affair with her subordinate. I sent copies of all the texts to myself in a surge of impulsivity. I wanted a chance to be able to use them. Once she got out of the shower, I told her I knew of the affair, and to not be as me about everything because I knew the truth. She seemed shocked that I would take the step of going into her phone and violating her trust, which was ridiculous. She was the one to cheat on me in the first place. She looked like she wanted to hit me, but just stormed off back into the bathroom. I was glad that we only had another month left on this lease because our marriage was over. For a few days after that, I was in shock about the end of my marriage, and once the shock wore off, the grief set in. My wife had left to go stay with her parents. They were supporting her, but this was no surprise. To them, she was their little girl who could do no wrong. I had finally sought out a lawyer and planned to move into another unit in the complex that was smaller than the one I shared with my wife. She seemed to be facing no consequences. Her family and friends were on her side, with her job still going well. It was then I had enough and decided to make the affair known to my wife's workplace. I had evidence to back it up, so it wasn't like I couldn't prove it. The fallout was quick. My wife was forced to resign, and the subordinate was moved to another department. When I learned she left her job, I was in shock. She reached out to me and lashed out, saying how she knew this was my fault. I didn't deny it and told her I took screenshots of her text messages that day and was sitting on them for weeks now. She screamed and cried, saying she was going to have her father hire a lawyer to go after me, but it was all bluster. My soon-to-be ex was the one who had done wrong by having a relationship with someone below her. It went against the rules set forth by her place of work. It was a relief when the divorce was final and we were no longer legally married. I spent a lot of this situation in a state of shock and then devastation. Most of the time, I was wavering between the two. The divorce being final was a chance for me to be able to heal, which I desperately needed. For a while, my ex-wife did try to harass me, but eventually, it stopped. I don't know why she did that, and frankly, I didn't care. It meant that my ex was now finally out of my hair. It was the best part of it. The last I heard about my ex is that she had gotten another job, but it's much lower painful than her other one. It had been hard for her to find one because of how suddenly she left her other job. This was completely of her own doing, so she had no one to blame but herself. I still don't know where it all went wrong or why she cheated in the first place. The best I can figure is she's just a terrible person who enjoyed the rush of cheating on me with someone at work. His being younger probably was a boost to her ego too. My ex certainly would have gone far in that job too. I've since received another promotion with another on the horizon. I also got the dog in the divorce because I was the one to take care of her anyway. There was no way she was going to take her. Honestly, I can say I don't care what happens to my ex or where she ends up in 5 years. I'm on the path to happiness, and she seems to be on a path to permanent misery. Do I hope that she looks back and regrets what she did? I hope one day I won't care about that either. Today's second story. In this story, OP and his wife had a seemingly perfect life, meeting at church and marrying after a traditional courtship. She became a successful Christian author, but suspicions arose when he found a signed book and discovered her communicating with a man. His doubts were confirmed when he caught her cheating on a book tour. He confronted her, leading to a breakup, and she faced significant personal and professional fallout. Now, let's get into the story. My wife and I had a great life together. We met at a church and started dating when she was 23 and I was 21. We were ready to get married in the eyes of God after 2 years of dating. We didn't move in or sleep together before that, opting to wait until marriage. I was sure she was an angel. She knew how to cook and even brought me cooked meals while we dated. She made it clear that she knew how to be a traditional wife that honored her husband. She was so good at being the perfect example of a Christian woman and wife that she wrote a book. It was really good, and a lot of her publicity started within our family, church, and hometown. She found a connection to a Christian publication company that supported her and what she stood for. We spent every moment together, and I fully supported her unexpected career as an author. For 3 years, we had an amazing, peaceful marriage. She was my rock. I loved how she excelled at the duties of a wife while managing to work on her second book. Before either of us knew it, she was going on her very first book tour. When she returned home, I unpacked her suitcase in the morning while she slept. A copy of her book fell out of a bundle of clothes. When I picked it up, I noticed she had signed it to someone named Ray with a sweet message and her phone number. I was so confused. Why would she do this, and why would she still have the book mixed in with her clothes? I woke her up and asked her about it. She is stumped and panicked, but plays it off as sleepy irritation. She asked me why I was going through her stuff. I told her I just wanted to help her unpack, and found this. She calmly explained that it was for a woman named Ray who loved her book and had gotten lunch with her. She had accidentally left it on the table when she left, so my wife planned to give it back to her. This didn't sound right. How did she leave the book without my wife being able to stop her? I pointed out that the spelling was likely wrong if she really was a woman. My wife asked me what I meant by that, saying it wasn't fair for me to assume she was lying. I asked her one more time if she was telling me the truth, and she swore she was being honest. She started to look genuinely concerned when she realized how upset I was. She got up and gave me a long hug, kissing my neck, swearing that I was the only man for her, and our life together had only just begun. I left the room feeling confused and slightly concerned. A few days later, I got home from work and noticed her through the living room window, talking on the phone. She was laying on the couch, bouncing her crossed legs and spinning her hair. She was smiling ear to ear, giggling, biting her lip. She looked adorable, but I had no idea who she talked to like that. When I walked in, she must have hung up on the person because she was instantly off the phone, greeting me as if all was normal. Over dinner, I asked her who she was talking with on the phone. She looked a little surprised that I saw, but she quickly and shamelessly admitted it was the woman Ray. I wanted to check her phone to see what number it was and try to call it. That night, for the first time, my wife put her phone under her pillow to sleep, claiming it would be easier for her to hear her alarm. I thought about demanding her phone right then and there, but I honestly started to doubt myself. I wasn't sure she was up to anything out of the ordinary, because she was normally a social butterfly. Just because she was talking to someone or multiple people didn't mean she was cheating on me. I really wanted to sleep that night because I was exhausted, so I didn't start anything. The next morning, she told me she was going to be home late because she was going to meet with her publishing agent, Tracy. This made sense because she was working on a second book. I asked her how it was coming along, and she read some of it to me. I asked where they'd be meeting, and she told me where the publishing office was located. I told her I thought they'd closed at 4, and she said she was going late because that was the only time Tracy had available to see her. I asked why they couldn't meet another day and explained that I didn't like it when she wasn't home when I was off work. My wife snapped and said she'd been feeling this sense of distrust lately, and she hated it. Before walking away, she told me I needed to knock it off. That was the first time my wife ever said anything like that to me. I drove to the publishing office after work and found the parking lot empty, 0 cars. I drove around aimlessly for a bit, calling my wife over and over. I felt extremely lost and betrayed. I went home and tried to stay awake to wait for her, but I fell asleep around 1 a.m. I'm surprised that I didn't wake up whenever my wife got home. She just snuck into our room and went to bed. I found her the next morning, sat me asleep. I checked my phone and noticed a delayed Easy Pass notification. My wife never took the turnpike anywhere, unless it was to promote her writing career, and in those situations. Vibrations she always told me. I was sure now she was having an affair, but I wanted to catch her red-handed so she couldn't lie to me anymore. The time I spent waiting for her to actually separate from her phone felt like an eternity. She didn't make it obvious that she was texting, but I could tell she was in communication with someone. When she finally separated from her phone, it was because she spilled a soda and went to grab a towel. I grabbed her phone and went into the bathroom. I installed a tracking app as quickly as I could, hiding it in a utilities folder on her phone. I didn't have time to look through her phone for anything. I just prayed this would work. I heard her wonder out loud where her phone went. I decided to call the house phone as a distraction. When she went to answer it, I jumped out of the bathroom and put her phone in the couch cushions. She didn't have a clue. I got home from work a week later, and she told me she was going to a book signing the next day, hours away, so she'd be spending the night in Lancaster. That town made sense according to the Easy Pass charges. I pretended to be fine with it, but I knew I was going to follow her. She planned to depart while I was at work, so I had to call off. I couldn't focus on work anyway. Since I suspected my wife of infidelity, I called Tracy to ask about the book signing my wife was going to. She validated my concern by telling me that there wouldn't be another book signing for months. When I told her I suspected my wife of cheating on me, she said if that was the case, they wouldn't continue working with her to promote her book. I lost her for a bit after she got off the exit, but I was able to locate her on the tracking app. She was at an inn. I parked and watched her bring in her luggage. Not even 10 minutes later, another car pulled up. A man got out with flowers and knocked on her door. She answered it and squealed she was so excited. She threw her arms around his neck and started kissing him passionately. His hands immediately started feeling her body and intimate parts. I jumped out of the car and sprinted over to them. When they heard me and turned to look, My wife made a very distressed noise that I never heard her make before. First, she asked me what I was doing there. I asked her what he was doing here. He asked me who I was, and I wanted to punch him. I yelled that I was her husband, and he started backing off. He threw his arms up and went for his car. My wife called after him and looked at me like I just broke her heart. She started stammering. She wanted to be mad at me, but she was the one that was caught. I accused her of cheating on me and throwing away our entire relationship and life together for some random man that read her book. I started walking away, realizing this was the worst moment of my life, and it was only the beginning of the end. My wife chased after me, trying to convince me to talk to her. I told her I didn't have another word to say, and she should spend her energy trying to save her job. I left her there in the parking lot. She tried calling me and texting me several times, all while I canceled the bank card she had that connected to my bank account. I knew she was counting on that for Easy Pass and her car payment. I stopped on the way home for new door locks. She showed up the next day and tried to use her key. When that didn't work, she stopped around the backyard, trying to slide open the glass door. Her name wasn't on the mortgage because her credit was non-existent. I was going to make sure she suffered the consequences of wasting years of my life and cheating on me. I yelled through the glass door that she didn't deserve a house, home, or husband. She stood there and tried calling me 12 times while making eye contact. I just sipped my coffee. I felt proud. I knew I could call the police on her at any moment and have her removed from my property, and I think she knew that, which is why she was trying so hard to be sweet. She left voicemails while standing at the back door. I walked away when she said she loved me. She started yelling and crying. I came back a half hour later, and she was still there. Through the back door, she begged me not to tell her parents or the church about what she'd done. She didn't want them to know she lost her career and husband by cheating. She begged me to give her a few trial days to see if she could make up for what she'd done. I laughed at her. There's nothing anyone can do to recover from cheating on their spouse. You just don't do it. While she sat there, I called her parents. She pounded on the glass in frustration, realizing she had nothing and no power. Her reputation was about to be shot within her church and family, and her book career was already brought to a screeching halt. As I spoke to her parents about what she'd done, she drove off angrily, probably to try to convince them it wasn't true or ask them for a place to stay. Either way, she was back in 2 hours, laying clothes from her suitcase on the porch like she was going to sleep there. I called the police, and she was ordered to leave. She threw a fit but narrowly avoided an arrest. To this day, she is still trying to find stability in life. She keeps hopping from sketchy to dodgy situations and relying on her very poor choices. Her Christian life, marriage, book, and family are all things of the past. She's living a very different life now,